Welcome to the debate. So today, we're diving deep into the really fast-moving capabilities of these frontier AI models, the big large language models, and, well, what they might mean for knowledge work jobs. I mean, we're past simple chatbots now. These things are showing expert-level performance. So the central question, it feels unavoidable really, is this. Does the latest data showing models matching or even beating human experts on specific complex tasks, does that mean AI is fundamentally heading towards wholesale job replacement, full automation? Or is its role going to be more limited to, say, augmentation and just reshaping how we work? I'll be arguing that the speed and the quality we're seeing, it points pretty directly towards imminent automation and eventually replacing significant chunks of knowledge work.
And I'll be taking the other side. While, yes, the capability increase is frankly incredible, you can't deny that, but the evidence also shows some pretty significant limits, methodological ones in the studies, inherent high-risk profiles with these models, and honestly, some strong lessons from history. And these factors, I believe, prove that AI is primarily going to be a tool for augmentation. It'll increase worker value, boost productivity, sure, but not wipe out entire roles. The reality of actually integrating this stuff, that always puts a brake on the pure replacement theory.
Right. So my position really hinges on this qualitative leap we're seeing. These frontier models are now, and this is the quote, approaching industry experts in deliverable quality. That is the absolute game changer. It's not just, slightly better grammar or summaries. It's about passing really tough, high-stakes tests. Lawrence Summers, looking at these results, even called them task-specific Turing tests. Now, just to be clear, that doesn't mean fooling someone in a chat. It means hitting an expert-level performance bar for a specific professional task. And when a tool does that, matches or beats the human expert, well, the fundamental capability for automation is there. It's established. And this is backed up by the fact that the really big speed gains, they only show up with the top-tier models, like the GPT-5 level systems. These are the ones with huge context windows, specialized training. They genuinely accelerate workflows. And that ability to just take over big, high-value blocks of work. And seeing competitors like Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.1 also hit this expert level, well, it signals a much deeper shift than just, giving people a better assistant.
I suppose I come at this from a slightly different angle. I'm looking less at the theoretical potential, the ceiling, and more at the, let's call it the operational floor. Yes, capability is growing, but the material itself highlights some serious operational hurdles that I think fundamentally prevent wholesale job replacement, especially in, high-stakes professional fields. We really have to look closely at the study design itself. It was very constrained. It focused only on digital-heavy roles. And that choice, it intentionally excluded core parts of almost every real job. The back and forth you need with clients or colleagues, using specific company software, internal databases or old legacy systems, and of course anything not purely digital, like meeting people or being physically present. So if the study design cuts out these essential non-negotiable parts of a job, how can we realistically forecast full role replacement based on it? And then there's the risk. We just cannot sweep this under the rug. The study showed that around 2.7% of the time, these models made catastrophic mistakes. Just imagine that. Hallucinating financial figures in a report that goes public, or maybe insulting a major customer in an automated email. I mean, these aren't trivial errors. These safety risks, they massively outweigh any theoretical efficiency boost for roles where, trust and reliability are paramount. So for these reasons, AI really has to be seen mostly as a multiplier. It helps the existing accountable human workers do more faster. It's not a replacement standing by itself.
Okay, but I challenge the idea that those operational limits, like, getting it to work with old software or needing clarification, that they undermine the replacement argument itself. We're talking about the core intellectual capability here, right? Not the initial bumps in the road of getting it adopted. Technology adoption, it always has friction, always. But when the evidence confirms the intellectual capacity is there, and we see that models beating humans with complex files, PDFs, spreadsheets, then the automation pathway is clearly laid out. The potential for replacement is set by that performance ceiling, not by the initial reliability issues. We're already seeing models that can, draft a complex 50-page legal brief in minutes. Okay, maybe it needs a human check. But the human job then shifts, doesn't it? It goes from doing the heavy lifting, the drafting, the synthesizing, to basically oversight and maybe some refinement.
And that fundamental reduction in the type of labor needed, that's the first step towards role elimination.
Yeah, but oversight and refinement doesn't just dismiss the risk factor as an integration hurdle. System reliability, it's everything in professional settings, especially high-stakes ones. Let's stick with that 2.7% catastrophic error rate for a second. Okay, imagine a firm handling, say, hundreds of client cases or financial disclosures every single day. A 2.7% rate of catastrophic errors? Well, that's completely untenable. It's asking for lawsuits, it destroys client trust. So if you say the human role shifts from doing to overseeing, have you really cut the overall cost or complexity? Or have you just shifted where the expert labor is needed? You still need someone senior, an experienced analyst, a lawyer, checking every single output with basically the same level of care they'd need to do it themselves. Otherwise, the potential damage from just one hallucination could wipe out months, maybe years, of supposed efficiency gains. So, how does shifting to this kind of mandatory constant oversight actually lead to real labor reduction in critical fields, practically speaking?
Well, look, I acknowledge the oversight burden is real, but overseeing is still faster than doing the original work from scratch. And we're already seeing a variation across sectors where models do perform really well. Things like government-related tasks, maybe, where inputs are standardized and the rules are clearer, which reduces some of that creative risk. In those kinds of well-defined digital pipelines, focused automation seems entirely practical. And also, when we talk about that 2.7% error rate, we have to factor in the speed multiplier, right? If a worker can now generate, say, 10 drafts in the time it used to take for one, well, the 97.3% that are accurate still represent a huge efficiency leap. The human isn't doing the core cognitive task anymore. They're validating the output of a system that does it maybe 10 times faster. That fundamentally changes the labor equation, pushing towards needing fewer people.
So yes, human oversight deals with the edge case, the 2.7%. But that doesn't negate the core shift towards replacing the workflow itself.
That explanation feels like it's glossing over some pretty deep institutional constraints, though. You're betting everything on speed. I'd argue that the human piece, the interpretation, the context, handling messy internal knowledge, that barrier is just too high right now for full replacement. Let's take a hypothetical. A big company invests heavily in an LLM for its quarterly reports. The model's great at writing, but it keeps misinterpreting some weird internal codes from their old CRM system, and it messes up the divisional performance figures maybe 3% of the time. So, the company then realizes they need 2 dedicated analysts just to constantly check and cross-reference these inputs against the real data. Now, is that cost reduction, or is it role reshaping towards highly specialized quality assurance? It actually makes those workers more valuable, because they're the essential bridge between the general-purpose AI and the company's specific, messy reality.
Okay, proprietary tools are maybe a temporary hurdle, I'll grant you that, but not a permanent block on AI's potential. Companies will likely adapt their internal systems to the AI eventually, not the other way around if the gains are big enough. But let's set integration aside for a moment. I think we need to tackle that historical analogy that came up in the material, the one that seems to support your point.
Yes, exactly where I wanted to go. We need to ground this in some historical reality. I mean, have you really considered the parallel with radiology? It's powerful. Back in 2017? Early AI models were shown to outperform human radiologists at diagnosing pneumonia from X-rays, and the predictions flew. Radiologists were obsolete. It was over. But here we are, 8 years later, and radiologists are not only still here, they're in high demand, and salaries are up. So why did that replacement prediction fail so badly? Well, because the AI could only do one very narrow thing, spot a specific pattern on a static image. It missed edge cases, it couldn't understand patient history or symptoms, and crucially, it had zero capability for patient interaction or, taking legal responsibility. That history, it strongly suggests that even if these new LLMs match experts in specific digital tasks, the whole professions will persist. They'll adapt. They'll use the AI to become way more productive. They become multipliers, not targets for the chopping block.
I see why you bring up radiology, I do. But I'd argue that LLMs hitting knowledge work, it's fundamentally different from those early computer vision systems in medicine. The material itself gives us the key distinction. Only digital-heavy roles were included in this AI study we're discussing. Radiology has significant hands-on elements, physical aspects, highly regulated patient interaction. LLMs, though, they target pure knowledge work by definition, manipulating text, data, code, communication. It's inherently much more vulnerable to full automation than, say, medicine. We're not talking about reading a physical X-ray here. We're talking about drafting a marketing plan, analyzing stock trends, summarizing meeting notes. That stuff is almost entirely digital, abstract.
Okay, but is any knowledge work role ever purely digital, even if the study artificially limited itself that way? Think about it. A property manager, yeah, they do emails, but they also have to handle tenant disputes face-to-face sometimes. A financial analyst might build models, but then they have to stand up and justify those models to skeptical executives. The study confirms that context, clarification, human interaction, they were excluded for a reason. The AI isn't good at them. And furthermore, the material points out something interesting. Maybe the real tipping point with LLMs isn't just task skill, but achieving trust in media, the ability to generate stuff that feels convincingly human.
But doesn't that actually create higher liability? If the AI's output is indistinguishable from a human's, doesn't the need for human accountability become even greater? That reinforces the need for human control, not elimination. I think that view might be a bit too conservative about how fast technology actually gets adopted. If the core capability is proven, market pressures will force companies to integrate it. The efficiency gains are just too big to ignore forever. Yes, adoption lags, sure, and the material mentions companies abandoning AI pilots. But that often points to, well, management failure, maybe poor choices in how they try to roll it out initially, not a fundamental problem with the tech's capability itself. So if a pilot fails because they aimed for 100% automation on day one, maybe they retool and succeed by automating 80% instead. And automating 80%, that's still a massive displacement of labor. That 80% is the pathway to replacement, maybe achieved quietly, just by not hiring replacements when people leave or retire.
Well, that assumes a smooth path to 80% automation, which I really question. The evidence suggests that for many jobs, that remaining 20%, the contextual stuff, the legal responsibility, the interpersonal skills, those are actually the most critical and often the most time-consuming parts. And they're the parts that need the highest human expertise. We have to remember the historical pattern here. It's almost always augmentation, not elimination, when a powerful new tech comes along. Think about spreadsheets. Did they eliminate accountants? No. They eliminated the need for people who were just good at manual arithmetic. The accountant's role got elevated to more complex analysis and modeling. AI feels like the next spreadsheet. It takes away the drudgery maybe, but the human role shifts upwards, managing the increased complexity and speed the AI enables.
See, I think that's where our definitions of replacement really start to diverge. If AI can automate huge chunks of a role, even in something like property management, maybe it handles all the standard correspondence, lease summaries, it fundamentally changes the number of humans you need and the skills they require. That initial augmentation phase, I think it rapidly paves the way for roles to be compressed, combined, and ultimately for headcount to be eliminated. The goal for the business isn't just making workers slightly better. The end game is efficiency, cost reduction, and that means fewer people doing the same total amount of work. It is replacement, maybe achieved by aggressively bundling tasks that used to be spread across multiple people. The required skill shifts from doing the task to prompting the AI and validating its output.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that elimination is the inevitable outcome. You keep framing it like a zero-sum game. The source material's final reflection is pretty clear. Industries might adapt by reshaping roles rather than erasing them. And that idea of reshaping, it implies the human role shifts specifically towards handling ambiguity, providing context, asking for clarification, dealing with those unique internal tools, and crucially taking on the legal and social responsibilities. These are precisely the areas the study confirms current AI models cannot handle well. The complexity of real-world work, it often needs multiple human viewpoints. And these models, well, they're fundamentally limited by the study's own exclusions. The human becomes the essential filter for accountability, for relevance, for making sure it all actually makes sense in the real world.
Accountability, though, that can be managed with new rules and regulations, and specialized training can bridge some of those integration gaps over time. The core point for me remains the demonstrated ability of these top-tier models to pass those task-specific Turing tests, to deliver enormous speed improvements. It shows a capability level that goes way beyond simple augmentation. It is a capacity for genuine automation. And the market will inevitably find ways to use that capacity to cut down on human labor for high-volume, maybe repetitive knowledge tasks. And that will lead to some profound changes in the workforce.
And from my perspective, the evidence points much more strongly towards augmentation. The frankly unacceptable risk from those catastrophic errors, the built-in limits of the research, which ignored crucial real-world factors like interaction and proprietary data, and that very potent lesson from radiology's non-disappearance. It all suggests that professional roles will stick around. They'll adapt, yes. Workers will become more valuable as multipliers, leveraging AI, focusing their unique human skills on context, trust, and accountability, precisely where the AI currently falls short.
Well, I think we both certainly agree on the powerful, undeniable impact of current LLMs and their expert-level skills in certain digital areas.
Yeah, the fundamental tension really remains, doesn't it? Is this expert capability the beginning of the end for many jobs, the precursor to replacement? Or are the current limitations and the lessons of history telling us it's more about permanent, albeit accelerated, augmentation? Clearly, there's a lot more to unpack as we see how industries actually manage, or maybe fail to manage, the integration of these incredibly powerful new tools in the coming years.